Hello, I'm Emily. I'm in second year is probably the closest way to describe where I am through my course. And we're reading from Daniel 12 verse 5. It's the final chapter. So Daniel 12 verse 5. Then I, Daniel, looked, and there before me stood two others, one on this bank of the river and one on the opposite bank. One of them said to the man clothed in linen, who was above the waters of the river, "How long will it be before these astonishing things are fulfilled?" The man clothed in linen, who was above the waters of the river, lifted his right hand and his left hand toward heaven, and I heard him swear by him who lives forever, saying, "It will be a time, times, and half a time. When the power of the holy people has finally been broken, all these things will be completed." I heard, but I did not understand. So I asked, "My Lord, what will the outcome of all this be?" He replied, "Go your way, Daniel, because the words are rolled up and sealed until the time of the end. Many will be purified, made spotless and refined, but the wicked will continue to be wicked. None of the wicked will understand, but those who are wise will understand. From the time that the daily sacrifice is abolished and the abomination that causes desolation is set up, there will be 1,290 days. Blessed is the one who waits for and reaches the end of the 1,335 days. As for you, go your way till the end. You will rest. And then, at the end of the days, you will rise to receive your allotted inheritance."
Have you ever been to see the 12 apostles at the Great Ocean Road? They're amazing, aren't they? These magnificent rock stacks that just rise out of the ocean. I remember going as a kid and I was really impressed, but I was also a bit confused because I counted them and there weren't 12. There was only 9. And then to make things worse, I found out recently that if I went back today as an adult, I wouldn't even find 9. There's only 7 now. Over the years, the buffeting of the waves, this constant buffeting, has produced erosion. And eventually, 2005, one of them collapsed. 2009, a second one collapsed. And apparently the same fate is eventually going to await the other 7. Buffeting, 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 erosion, collapse. If you live for Christ in this world, and if you do that over the long haul, there will be times where you feel like one of those rock stacks, constantly buffeted, 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 and in danger of collapse. Maybe you'll come up against trouble in your ministry. There might be people who oppose you. There might be people who mock you for what you're doing. Maybe you'll struggle financially because of your gospel generosity. Maybe you'll struggle with sickness or with doubt or with loneliness. Maybe it'll be the brokenness of the people that you're serving that you'll find so hard. Some of them suffering the effects of dysfunctional childhoods, of addictions, long-standing sinful patterns. Others struggling in their marriages or struggling to obey God. Or maybe some of those closest to you will walk away from the faith. If you live for Christ over the long haul, there will be times where you feel like one of those rock stacks, where you're constantly being buffeted and you're at risk of collapse, at risk of walking away from the faith, of walking away from serving Jesus. How do we persevere? How do we last the distance when we're constantly being buffeted by the trials of serving Jesus? The original hearers of Daniel chapter 12, they had been buffeted by trials. They just had 70 years of exile, 70 years far from the promised land, far from God's blessing, far from the temple. And then when freedom finally came and they went back to Jerusalem, what happened? More buffeting. Trouble, opposition, persecution. They couldn't even rebuild the temple. And if that wasn't enough, now in these recent visions from Daniel, they've been hearing what lies ahead for them is more buffeting, more trouble, more persecution. That's what we saw last time in Principles Hour, that vision in Daniel chapter 11, where the future for God's people was revealed. And what was revealed? It was buffeting, wasn't it? It was trials, persecution, trouble. How will they persevere? How will they last the distance when they're constantly being buffeted by the trials of serving God? Well, our text today is like the epilogue to last time's vision. It's a conversation that Daniel has with two angels where they reflect on what they've just heard in the vision and reflect on what to do about it. It's not just an epilogue to the vision, though. It's kind of like a conclusion to the whole book. And like any good conclusion, it brings together the big theme: perseverance. Perseverance in the face of trials. See, one way or another, that's been the big theme running right through the book of Daniel, hasn't it? How can we persevere in the face of trials? How can God's people persevere in a hostile world? We don't want to be that collapsing rock stack. So how can we persevere when we're constantly being buffeted by the waves of trouble and opposition and suffering? That's the question which our text, Daniel chapter 12, verses 5 to 13, addresses. Rosemary Ficken worked at an animal control pound in the state of Missouri in the US. One of her jobs, not a particularly pleasant job, was to euthanize, to kill stray dogs. So every day for 15 years, she would kill up to 10 dogs. 10 unwanted dogs. On one particular day, she had 8 strays that she had to kill, and she did everything like she normally did. She tranquilized the 8 dogs so they were asleep. She put them in an airtight box. She shut the door, and then for 15 minutes, she pumped in the poisonous carbon monoxide. That was all normal. It's what she normally did. But what happened next wasn't normal. She opened the door, and one of the dogs was standing there, staring right back at her, wagging its tail. His name was Quentin. He was a 1-year-old with auburn-coloured hair and pointy ears, and there he was, wagging his tail, surrounded by 7 dead dogs. Somehow, Quentin had survived. She'd never seen anything like it in 15 years, and she didn't have the heart to shut the door and pump in more gas. So she called him the miracle dog, and she found an owner for him. And he lived another 12 years before his natural death. I think of that moment where Rosemary opened the door and there was Quentin wagging his tail. I think it's a remarkable image of survival. There he is, this dog who just wouldn't give up, this dog who wouldn't die, just wagging his tail. We started with an image of a buffeted rock stack which eventually collapses. What we have here with Quentin is another image, a counter-image. Quentin, the humble stray who doesn't give up, who survives the worst that they could throw at him. And in these two images here, I think we've got our text today, perhaps the book of Daniel, in a nutshell. These two images, the collapsing rock stack, that's the danger that the book is written to address. That God's people might be so buffeted that they walk away, that they fall away. And then the other image, Quentin. This is what the author of the book, this is what God himself has in mind for us. Perseverers, survivors. God intends for us to be Quentin, not the collapsing rock stack. And that is why he has breathed out this text for us in Daniel 12. It's a text that is going to equip us to persevere. It's going to equip us to hold on during trials so that on the day when Jesus returns, we're still standing, we're still persevering in serving him. So let's get into it. Let's have a look at this text, Daniel chapter 12. As we do this, we're going to discover 3 truths that help us to persevere. 3 truths that help us to hold on through the trials. And as we discover these 3 truths, you will notice echoes of the previous texts that we've seen in the book of Daniel this semester. Here's the first one. The trials are limited. The trials are limited. God has limited their duration. Come with me to Daniel chapter 12 and verse 5. We're picking it up at the moment where the vision that we looked at last time is just finished. And so we've got Daniel, and he's standing on the riverbank where he was when he received the vision. And verse 5, have a look. It says, "Then I, Daniel, looked, and there before me stood two others, one on this bank of the river and one on the opposite bank." So Daniel sees two angels, and then one of them asks the other one a question. There's a question about the vision they've just seen. Verse 6, "One of them said to the man clothed in linen, who was above the waters of the river, 'How long will it be before these astonishing things are fulfilled?'" So the vision's just finished, they're reflecting on it, and the vision was filled with astonishing things. And the word that's translated astonishing, it's been used a few times in Daniel, including in the vision which has just finished from chapter 11, to describe the astonishingly terrible things that evil king is going to do. So astonishing here means astonishingly bad. And so the question here is, how long will this astonishingly bad persecution last? How long will God's people have to hold on through these trials? It may well be one of the angels who's asking the question of the other angel, but I can tell you what, Daniel is hanging on the answer here. You know that experience you have in class where someone asks a question and you go, "Yeah, that's what I want to know too," and you're hanging on the answer. That would be Daniel here. And that would be Daniel's original audience here. And it's you and me too. Any time we suffer, that's the question we want an answer to, isn't it? How long is this going to last? How long do I have to hold on through this? Well, let's look at the answer. Verse 7. "The man clothed in linen, who was above the waters of the river, lifted his right hand and his left hand towards heaven." That means it's a particularly solemn oath. "And I heard him swear by him who lives forever." He's swearing by God. This is a very solemn oath. What's he going to say? Saying, "It will be for a time, times, and half a time." That's the answer. How long will the trials last? They will last for a time, times, and half a time. Is that clear? What does it mean? Well, it means that the trials are limited. It means that they won't last forever. So as you know, in this type of literature, apocalyptic literature, the numbers have symbolic value. And 7 is a number which denotes fullness and completeness and perfection. And half of that, 3.5, denotes not fullness, not completeness, not perfection. And so when we're talking about time, 7 might denote eternity, whereas 3.5 would denote not eternity. So the phrase here, time, that's 1, times, that's 2, so 1 plus 2 is 3, and half a time, that adds up to 3.5. So you see the meaning here. The meaning of this solemn oath where the angel stands with both his hands and swears by God is the trials won't last forever. The duration is going to be limited, it's going to be cut short. It's not a precise answer, is it? It's not the kind of answer where we can start counting the days once the suffering starts to work out when it's going to end. That would be a misuse of the text. An appropriate use of the text is to find in this a simple yet profound encouragement. These trials won't last forever. They're not eternal. They're limited. God has determined in advance to cut them short. See, knowing this gives us courage to persevere. And we're going to need that because the suffering could be devastating. Just have a look at the end of verse 7. "When the power of the holy people has been finally broken, all these things will be completed." The trials which are predicted by chapter 11, they're going to be devastating. It's going to get to the point where the power of God's people is broken. The picture here is of future times when evil will have its way, when it will seem like darkness has won the day. God's people are suffering to the point that they are broken. Daniel, the book of Daniel, warns God's people at the time that such times are coming. And then, as we've seen in previous weeks, the New Testament writers pick up these images from Daniel and warn that similar times lie ahead for God's people, a pattern here. And if we find ourselves living through such times, how could we possibly persevere? Well, the answer is that we'll persevere by remembering that despite the depths of that suffering, they're not going to last forever. The trials are limited. So that's the first of the three truths that help us to persevere in this text. The trials are limited. The second is this: trials are purposeful. The trials are purposeful. Pick it up with me from verse 8. Daniel says, "I heard, but I did not understand. So I asked, 'My Lord, what will the outcome of all this be?'" So Daniel, he's been watching on and now he pipes up. He was listening in before, but now he just can't hold back any longer and he's got his own question. What's going to be the outcome of this? He's just heard that the power of God's people will be broken. And I think what he doesn't understand is how it could get that bad. And so his question is, what will be the outcome? Will God's people be completely wiped out? Will they survive at all? And the answer starts in verse 9. Have a look with me. The angel replies, "Go on your way, Daniel, because the words are rolled up and sealed until the time of the end." And so with the beginning of this answer here, it seems like the angel is going to shut down this conversation. Say, go on your way, get on with your business, Daniel. There's nothing more to this vision. It's time for this vision to be sealed up and distributed, sent out to the hearers. It's time for you just to get on with the task of serving God and persevering. That's what it seems like. But then in verse 10, he actually goes on to give an answer to Daniel's question. What will be the outcome of these trials? Verse 10, the answer is, "Many will be purified, made spotless and refined. But the wicked will continue to be wicked." What will be the outcome of the trials? The outcome will be that we'll be refined. Refined through fires of suffering. So here is the second of our three truths. The trials are purposeful. They're horrible. They're devastating. They're so bad that our power is broken, but they're also purposeful. In fact, it's when we're devastated, it's when we're broken that something happens, something good happens. It's then that we learn more than ever before to depend on God. It's when we discover the ends of our strength that we realise our need for His. It's when we suffer that we realise that we need to cast our lot in with the Lord. The trials are purposeful. They teach us to throw ourselves at God's feet, and that is the place where we get purified by God, made spotless by God. The trials are purposeful. I remember the day I first shared the gospel with a group of Muslim men, and I did that in fear, not knowing what their reaction, their response would be. That was a day where I learned more to throw myself at God's feet. I remember the day that I stood in a rural Southeast Asian hospital with a medical emergency and was told that they didn't have the equipment that was needed to treat me. That was a day where I learned to throw myself at God's feet. I remember the day I attended the funeral of someone close to me whose baby child had died, and I shared that grief. That was a day that I learned to throw myself at God's feet. The trials are purposeful. They give us an opportunity to learn to throw ourselves at God's feet. And since God is the only one who can purify us and make us spotless, that is a place, God's feet, that is a place that we want to be. Brokenness is purposeful. The trials are purposeful. And it's really crucial that you and I understand that. Because if we don't understand that, we'll give up. We'll give up on our faith. We will be that collapsing rock stack. Have a look at the last part of verse 10. None of the wicked will understand, but those who are wise will understand. The wicked, they don't understand. The wicked here, and we came across them in chapter 11 vision as well, they're the ones who fall away, who forsake God when trouble strikes. In chapter 11, they forsook the holy covenant in order to survive the persecution of the evil king. They didn't understand. They didn't understand that the trials are limited, that the trials are purposeful, so they did anything to save their own skin. They forsook God. They were the rock stack that collapsed. Because they don't understand, they think that trials are something to be avoided at all costs. So it says in verse 10, the wicked don't understand, but the wise do. The wise do understand. The wise understand that these trials have a purpose. The wise understand God's long-term plan and what he's doing with it all. And so through the trials, they hang on. The wise, they are Quinton, the humble, powerless, stray dog who survives, hanging on no matter what is thrown at them. That's why it's so important that you and I understand that the trials are purposeful. So we're discovering 3 truths from our text today, 3 truths that help us to persevere. So far we've seen first that the trials are limited, second that the trials are purposeful, and now for the third and final one, the kingdom is coming. The kingdom is coming. Let's pick it up from verse 11. From the time that the daily sacrifice is abolished and the abomination that causes desolation is set up, there will be 1,290 days. Blessed is the one who waits for and reaches the end of the 1,335 days. So in these 2 verses here, as you can see, once again, we've got numbers, probably symbolic numbers that we need to understand. And it's hard to know exactly what to make of them. Many have tried. But at the very least, I think what we can say is that they seem to represent a period of time that's both long, because they're big numbers, but also limited, because they're precise numbers. And so I think the meaning of these 2 verses is something like this. Verse 11, we've got this abomination that causes desolation again, so that we're talking about particularly intense trials. Intense trials will last for a time, symbolised by a number. But then even after that, there'll be more waiting, because there's an even bigger number that people have to wait before the end comes. But regardless of exactly how long it is that God's people have to wait, I think the really important point in these verses here is what awaits those who do wait. And that's blessing. Blessed is the one who waits and reaches the end. Blessed is the one who perseveres through the trials. However long it is that these trials are going to last, what gives us the strength to wait through them is the knowledge that blessing is coming. That everlasting blessing is coming to those who persevere to the end. And that's the closing message to Daniel in this final verse here in verse 13. The angel says, as for you, Daniel, go on your way till the end. You will rest, and then at the end of days, you will rise to receive your allotted inheritance. You will rest, you will rise. How do we persevere? We persevere by holding on to this hope. Blessing is coming. The resurrection is coming. Our internal inheritance awaits. We will rise. This is, if you'll recall, this is where last week's vision ended, with the resurrection of all people. And this is where the book of Daniel ends, with the resurrection. It's where the book of Revelation, the whole Bible ends as well, isn't it? With a picture of the resurrection and the kingdom that is to come. Revelation 21. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away. Those who are victorious, which means those who persevere to the end, will inherit all this. Blessing is coming. The resurrection is coming. God's eternal kingdom is coming. And knowing that that's going to happen then enables us to persevere now, even when we're buffeted by trials. New York pastor Tim Keller writes this about the resurrection hope that we have. The resurrection does not promise that all the circumstances of life will go smoothly, but it does give us hope that we can be turned into the kind of people who can handle whatever comes. It seems to me that he's almost thinking of Quentin, the survivor dog there, can handle whatever comes. And if you look at the history of the Christian church, look at the history of Christians, we can see that right through the ages, the hope of the resurrection has done just that. It's turned ordinary Jesus followers into people, the kind of people who can handle whatever comes, into survivor dogs like Quentin. There's a historian in the States called Kyle Harper. He's a historian who researched and has written about pandemics in the ancient world. So he's someone who used to have an obscure area that no one was interested in, but now everyone wants to talk to him. So he was interviewed last year when the pandemic first started about the pandemics in the Roman world, and he explained that through those bleakest of times, Christianity actually was thriving and just kept growing. And when he was asked why that was, this is what he said. He said, for the Christians, this life was always meant to be transitory and just part of a larger story. What was important to the Christians was to orient one's life towards the larger story, the cosmic story, the story of eternity. They did live in this world, experience pain and love others, but the Christians of that time were called to see the story of this life as just one of the stories in which they lived. The hidden map was this larger picture. See, we have a hidden map. We have this hope of resurrection. And that's what empowers us to persevere through trials. And so even when there's pandemics, in fact, even because of pandemics, the gospel can advance. So we're almost at the end of semester. I want to ask, how has it been for you? How has this semester been? I suspect if I got a chance to chat to you over morning tea or sometime later in the day and ask you, how's the semester been? I suspect most of you would say hard, right? Hard. Because it has been a hard semester, hasn't it? We've had this COVID outbreak in our city with hundreds of deaths. We've had a hard lockdown for over 100 days, and then still there's restrictions now, which has meant loss of community, loss of contact with friends, family, church, loss of rhythms at home, disappointments about plans that have been cancelled, constant adjustments to rules, mask wearing, Zoom, and then there were vaccination debates, and then debates about the restrictions over vaccinations, and it's just gone on and on, hasn't it? It's been a hard semester. And all the time that that's been going on, here in Principles Hour, we've been working our way through the book of Daniel, which was written to a group of people who were having it hard. Exiles in a hostile world. And I just wonder if God has used those two things and the coming together of those two things to bring about a work in you, in me. See, our trials haven't been the same as theirs. Our trials haven't been a targeted persecution against Christians, but we have had trials. It has been a hard semester. And as we've experienced these trials, and then as we've been studying the book of Daniel, I just want to know, has God been doing a work of growth in us, preparing us for a future of serving him in this world? Have there been moments this semester where in the midst of your brokenness, of the suffering, of the trials, where you've been comforted by knowing that these trials won't last forever? Where you've found strength from the knowledge that God gives meaning to the trials? Where you've persevered because you've known that the kingdom is coming? Have there been moments like that for you this semester? Because if there have, and I suspect that there have, then praise God. He's been doing a work in us. See, if you've had moments like that, God has been working through the challenges of this semester to bring about growth in you. If you've had moments like that, God's been preparing you for a future of serving him, a future where he's going to continue to call you to serve him while you're being buffeted by trials. If you've had moments like that this semester, you've been discovering the secret of persevering. You've been discovering that the secret of persevering is not by you or me being anything special. It's actually by us being broken, so broken that we realise we need to depend on him. We need to throw ourselves at his feet. He who limits the trials, he who gives them meaning, he who is preparing an eternal kingdom over which Christ will reign forever. So if you have had moments like that this semester, then praise God, thank God. And if I do get to ask you over morning tea or sometime later how your semester has been, maybe you'll have more to say to me than just hard. Maybe you'll also be able to say, God's been teaching me to be an anchored exile. God's been teaching me to live by hope in a hostile world. And I will reply, me too. Praise God.